All right, so we're going to use some of our parallel lines to actually start solving some of these equations, similar to what we did yesterday with all the different vertical angles and supplements and whatnot. And a great method for that, excuse me, is what I like to call the dot method. And so what you're going to end up doing here is you want to put dots in a set of vertical angles. So you basically got the two sets of angles, right? You got your four angles up here and your four angles down there. So you're going to pick one set of vertical angles and put some dots in it. So for example, we'll put dots there and there. And then we're going to go ahead and now we're going to put dots in the corresponding uh, spots, in the same spots of other set. So for example, since we did those two in the top set, it'd be these two in the bottom set. Similarly, I could also do it where if I pick these two vertical angles, then I'm going to end up putting dots in those as corresponding angles. So basically, you're going to have dots in a set of vertical angles in both um, sets of angles, right? So you got this set with two dots and that set with two dots. And the trick here for us, guys, is once we start putting these things together to solve equations, if we compare a dot to a dot, or a no dot to a no dot, these are both equal. If you compare a dot to a no dot, however, right, there's three scenarios. You can either compare a dot to a dot, something that doesn't have a dot, to no dot, excuse me. But if you do a dot to a no dot, so for example, if we had something written here and something written here, well, this one has no dot, and this one has a dot. If that's the scenario, let me go ahead and get rid of that. And then what you're looking at are supplements, or what we should remember from yesterday, they add up to be 180. So let's look at the very first one. Find the measure of the indicated angle. So pick a set of vertical angles in the top. So I'm going to pick those two. Do the same set in the bottom, and you can see, so 105, there is no dot there. And the question mark also has no dot. Well, I'm comparing a no dot to a no dot. Well, that's the same thing. And if we look above, no dot to no dot tells me that those two things are equal. So this particular angle then is 105. Now, what if I were to switch it and I did my dots the other way? What if I started with dots in that set of vertical angles? Well, match the same angles in the bottom set. Now all of a sudden I went dot to dot. And dot to dot this time, right? That's the same thing. Dot to dot. Well, same, another word for same is equal. So I set those equal. So again, in other words, since the dots have 105, then the question mark is 105 degrees. So either way, whether you started with a dot or started without a dot, you should still end up at 105 degrees. Let's try it again right here with the 48. So what if I start with those two angles? Well, you'd mark the corresponding ones in the top, right? Mark the same set. And sure enough, 48 has a dot. The question mark has a dot. That's the same thing, which means this angle right here is 48 degrees. Now we start solving some of these. All right. So let me scroll down. And right away. So we'll set up. There's my vertical angles with dots. So come down to the bottom set, do the same thing. We can see 18x plus 4. That's a no dot. 130. That's a no dot. So that tells me that 18x plus 4, no dot to no dot, means that they are equal. Equals 130. Set up my algebra. 18x, subtract 4 from both sides is 126. And if I divide both sides by 18, then x equals 7. Look at number 8. I'll put my dots in that set of vertical angles, which means when I come to the bottom set, I'm here. So 8x doesn't have a dot. There's no dot on the 8x. The 40 has no dot. And since I'm comparing a no dot to a no dot, that tells me to set these two things equal. So in other words, 8x equals 40. Pretty straightforward algebra. Divide both sides by 8. X equals 5. And number 9. I'll set up my dots in that particular set of vertical angles and then get the matching set below. And again, we got a no dot and a no dot, right? 15x plus 6, 16x minus 1. Neither of them have a dot, which tells me to go ahead and set those two things equal to each other. And here the algebra is getting a little bit trickier, but we just got to move pieces around. So let's move that 1. I like to add instead of subtract. So 15x plus 7 equals 16x. And then we'll move the 15x over, since we sent the numbers one way. Leaves me with 7 on one side, and 16x minus 15x is just x. And that's actually very nice. So 7 equals x. And then number 10, we'll go ahead and do our dots in that set of angles. So the corresponding ones below. Now all of a sudden, if we look here, 85 plus x, that has a dot. And then x plus 117, there's no dot with this right here. So when I do a dot and a no dot, go back to the top, you can see dot and no dot means they're supplements. In other words, 85 plus x, there's one of the angles, plus x plus 117, those are going to add up to be equal to 180. So here's a case where we got to combine some like terms. So let's combine the 85 and the 117. That's 202. Let's combine x plus x is 2x. All right, now we need to move the 202 over. Subtract 202 from both sides. So here all of a sudden, we're going to get a negative number, but that's okay. Negative 22. We're left with 2x on this side. Divide both sides by 2. So x equals negative 11. And it's okay to get negatives. That's not a bad thing. And then very quickly, just to kind of wrap this up, let's look at 2 more examples. We'll just set up with our dots. Set up those vertical angles, which means it's this bottom set. So here's a no dot and a no dot, which means that they are equal to each other, which means this particular angle is 68 degrees. And number 12, I'll set up that set of vertical angles, which means I need to do this set. Sure enough, the question mark has no dot, but the 75 has a dot. So no dot with a dot means that they need to add up to 180. So the question mark plus 75 equals 180. If we subtract 75 from both sides, right, we can treat the question mark just like a variable. And that tells me that the question mark angle is 105 degrees. So at this point, if you'll flip the page and try page 25 on your own, just be careful with the algebra. Throw the dots in the correct places. And good luck.